Hey y'all, it's Everett Maxine. I know it's been a while since you heard my voice, and I hope you have been well. In 2019, when I began the podcast, it was an opportunity to share memories, testimonies of what God had done in my life, and also the opportunity to honor my mother, who was found deceased June 19th of 2018. God had put it upon my heart that it was time to be vulnerable about my life and to share with others, to encourage them that they were not alone. All of this in the middle of my own grief journey. My grandmother, who had passed May 28th of 2018, finding my mom, like I said, on June 19th of 2018, and the demise of my divorce that was finalized November 5th of 2018. Life was really lifing, but the goodness of God held me up with His strength. And you listened, you shared, you were encouraged, you were moved. A year after I began the podcast, a lady found me by the name of Andrea Powell through the Audrey app. That was an app then that also shared podcasts. And she asked me to be a guest on her radio show, her live radio show. I was honored and privileged at the opportunity. And I feel like as I relaunch the podcast, it's a need to share that interview. Because as I go from the season where I shared all of my hurt to encourage you with hope, it's necessary for me to share those gems and those jewels that I shared then 4 years ago. So listen in to the interview, and I'll check back in with you when it's done. Be blessed.
This morning we have Miss Everett Maxine, and before I allow her to speak, I want to read just a snippet of her bio so I can give y'all a little background about Miss Maxine. July 19, her podcast was birthed, titled The Absence of Her. Ooh la la, The Absence of Her. In memory of her mother, in which she shares her truth from childhood to adulthood about being sexually abused, living with the spirit of rejection, grief, and issues facing women daily. After being a client of therapy for the last 3 years, she promotes the need for being mentally healthy. Her belief is that she has not survived for herself, but for the purpose to help others through her testimonies and truths. The Absence of Her can be found all over. She's on Apple Podcasts, Speaker, Audrey, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and so on. Her courageous voice has been heard all across the United States and even a few countries abroad. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Miss Everett Maxine. Yes, so I found her on one of the many outlets in which her podcast is viewable or listening to. And there was this one episode I came across in particular where she started off with a poem, and I was like, okay, lady, okay. And I want to give y'all the opportunity to hear what I heard that initially drew me in, because that's when I started listening to some of the other material that she had available, and I was like, okay, this lady has some depth. And I want to invite her so my listeners can hear what I hear. So, Miss Maxine, if you wouldn't mind sharing the piece that you wrote entitled Tomorrow.
Sure. I wish you could see tomorrow and have a better view of how to release that anger inside of you. Whether it's over a lover, money, or a lost fight, taking the life of another just isn't right. I wish you could see tomorrow and see the tears in those children's face, because that murdered parent can never be replaced. A bullet isn't a solution. The real problem will still exist. Why can't you just have words or handle it with your fist? I wish you could see tomorrow and put your pride to the side. Had you thought about tomorrow, maybe no one would have died. Thou shalt not kill is a commandment that you must have missed. But I understand we live in a world that lives as if God's word does not exist. I wish you could see tomorrow and understand that gun violence is not the only way. Because you left family members mourning, until their dying day. A bullet doesn't win a battle. It only starts a war, because taking the life of another is going too far. You may feel superior taking one life, when in reality, you have lost two, because your life is gone also when the authorities catch you. I wish you could see tomorrow and envision that prison cell, because trapped in your thoughts behind bars is your own personal hell.
Tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, usually I start off with the same two questions, and I'm going to hit you with those two questions. But before I go, I would like to know, what was your frame of mind? What was your motivation? What was your inspiration behind penning that seemingly very personal piece of art?
This year, when I wrote it, we actually had 3 murders in my hometown of Bay City. And it's a very small population. It's about 20,000 people. And it was very personal to me, because most of the people that had been murdered were somebody that I knew or somebody else knew, and they were all under the age of 50.
Oh, wow.
And so I wrote that, dedicating that piece and that podcast, Nobody Wins, was the title of the podcast, about gun violence and honoring basically their families and letting people know, like, take the time to think. I know people get angry, they're quick to pull out a gun, but think about taking a life. Like, you can't reverse that. That's irreversible.
Right. Well, once again, thank you, because, like, listening to it on your podcast, I'm like, man, I know there has to be a story behind this one, because she's talking about, like that came from a very personal place. So thank you for your transparency and vulnerability in that aspect. So I would like to start off with the questions that I ask each and every one of my guests. Number 1, Miss Everett, if you had the undivided attention of an audience of your choosing, who would be the audience, and what would you tell them?
My audience would most definitely be young women, preferably around the ages of 18 to 25, and they've gone through some type of abuse. And I would tell them, don't build on brokenness. Okay. Like, dig at that cracked foundation, uproot those feelings of worthlessness, because you felt you had a child out of wedlock, feelings of neglect because your parents chose addiction over you. Any kind of negative feeling, uproot that before you start your career, your education. Get all that junk out of the way. Because, Romans 12 talks about renewing the mind. And to renew means to resume after interruption in progress. So whatever happened to you then was a temporary moment, and don't allow it to define your future.
You said, I need you to rewind. You said renew means to what?
Means to resume after interruption in progress.
Resume after interruption in process. I like that. I am quick to go to a dictionary real quick and give specific meanings for real, because I'm like, I feel like if more people knew what this meant, they would understand. But I like that. I can tell already that you have a heart for women who have been in some kind of survival mode. And I say that because to have survived and gone through abuse, you have to be a survivor. You have to, because everyone doesn't, unfortunately, and we know this. So women 18 through 25, and that's young. I mean, you're at the precipice of coming out of a state of childhood and entering into that, adulthood. And without a proper foundation, it can be a really scary place. And especially if you've been coming out of abuse and some of the other things that you mentioned that you wanted to speak to. And I'm quite certain that you use your platform for that, which is why I'm really excited to, if I can in any way, shape, or form, bring the absence of her to a spotlight and put her on a bigger platform, because I feel like you are you're saying some things that people need to hear, and not just women and young women. Like the fellas need to hear this too.
Oh, absolutely.
I hope y'all out here listening. But yeah, it's awesome. Okay, so number 2. If you had the opportunity to speak to a younger version of yourself, let's say 5 or 6 year old little Miss Everett, what do you think that she would need to hear?
You're loved and you're beautiful. Enjoy being a child the best you can. Your life is worth something. It has purpose. And your challenges you face is just because the enemy doesn't want you to survive and to exist.
That's heavy for a 5-year-old, you said.
I had a heavy childhood.
Yeah. Because you said the enemy doesn't want you to exist. So you feel as though at 5 and 6-year-old, like, you knew that he was trying to take you out?
From very early on, I felt very neglected. I felt very unwanted. And so that spirit of rejection sat in me for up until adulthood.
Wow. Okay. Well, every time I ask this question, I hear something new, but the sentiment remains the same. Like, stay in there, kiddo. Like, better days are coming. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Okay, you are loved. You are beautiful. Be a kid. Enjoy being a kid. I flipped the script a few months ago, and I had kids come on, and I asked them questions, but like opposite of the first two. And one of the kids, she said that, I want the adults to know that kids go through hard stuff too. And I was like, I felt that in my shondo, because I think a lot of times we think, oh, you're a kid, go sit in the corner. Children are to be seen and not heard, but like legit kids can have issues. And from what you're telling me, you feel like you said you had a really heavy childhood.
Right.
Yeah, having someone to say, hey, I'm going through, I bet would have been, wow, a major turning point. So, my listeners, they heard a snippet about your podcast and how it was birthed. But I would very much like to give you some room. I want to allow you to give us some insight into this journey. Like, what was that one defining moment when you knew, okay, this is going to be bigger than I thought it was?
Well, there was a couple of things that transpired as, you started listening to my podcast. And in 2018, it was just full of loss for me. My grandma passed, my mom passed not even a month later, and my divorce was final the same year. And like everybody saw me as strong, and many were surprised that I was even divorcing my former husband. And as I looked over my life those couple of months, I was like, there are people that look up to me, my lifestyle, they think I'm happy, and I feel like I'm painting this false picture for them. Because everybody doesn't follow God, but they sometimes look at us believers and try to learn from us. So in the spring of 2019, I was praying about something where I could honor my mom and share my truth. And podcast came in my spirit, but I hesitated because I was worried about, what will people think when I come out here with all these hard-hitting truths. And so it was in April that I was invited to speak at Texas Southern University's Marundi Gray up there because I was a scholarship recipient. And there were only 3 of us. I was the only female standing center stage in a room with Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, best-selling author Rashonda Tate Billingsley, SWV was there, and all these dignitaries. And before them, I shared about the loss of my mother and how she was one of the people that I relied on for financial help and how I thanked them for their scholarship. And in that moment, as I stood there center stage, God was showing me He could open doors for me, that if I submitted my life to Him, He could use me for His purpose, and that I could really reach people and make a difference in their lives. So I said, I absolutely have to follow through with doing this podcast.
Okay, and that was in April, you said?
Yeah, April of 2019.
So when did, your first one launch?
July 7th of 2019.
And she wouldn't play no game. She was like, okay, you said podcast guy, I got you. Well, that's what's up. I mean, I love how he will use a situation. Like, he wasn't joking. When he said all things work together for our good, he meant that thing.
Absolutely.
He meant that thing. So the good, the bad, the ugly, he don't waste nothing. He don't leave crumbs on the table. Everything can be used. And a lot of times, oh, Father God, help me. A lot of times when you're going through some ugly stuff, and you're like, man, Lord, why? And then what I notice sometimes, a lot of times he will cause people to cross your path that are going through something similar. And
Absolutely.
that caused me to be like, okay, Lord, well, why? Like, am I at a place where I can, a lot of people don't like to use this word, but I'm going to go ahead and say minister to a person who's going through the same thing I can. What do I have to give this person when I'm needing help in this area myself? And I came across some scripture where he will basically cause you, like, to come across people that go through the same thing as you do, because that was why you went through the experience, so you can help that person get through, so you can let them know, okay, it doesn't end here, this is what it looks like on the other side, and maybe even give them some clues about the terrain that you're currently going through, like, let me help you find this spot, and this is what I did. So I'm learning, even though it's going to sound crazy, I'm learning to appreciate the hard times, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, it says give praises for all things, you know, and I think that's one of the things that people fail when it comes to Christianity, because we automatically think everything's going to be all good, and it's not going to be all good. But even when it doesn't feel good, we still have to give God thanks.
Yes, ma'am. And I think a big part of that, I mean, I'm thankful that he's faithful, like, because it really does work together for our good, and we just have to stick it until we see the good. And sometimes we see it a lot sooner, sometimes we don't see it as soon, but know that it is, because he said so. So, thank you for making the decision, one, to be obedient. And now that you have, okay, so have you had that moment where it's like, oh, so this is what you had going on, Jesus? Like, have you had that moment?
Yes, and I have this moment where a friend told me, a minister friend told me a couple of years ago, when I said I want to go back to school, I want to do this, I want to do that, and then I want to go back to church. And she was like, why can't you put God first, and then everything else will work out? I tried it my way so many times, and when I have put God first, when I say things, even the rough times have been so much smoother. And it's like, Lord, why did I do this before? Why didn't I walk in obedience before? Why did I do everything to try to be within your will and not try to control everything myself?
We got to do stuff the hard way. Sometimes we got to bump our head a few times, too, until we get it right. So, I know it's difficult, though, and I know we're about to get into some of that difficult stuff that I'm alluding to, but, like, you said earlier that you were afraid about what people will think, like, once they get to know, like, the real. So I guess, what was the motivation behind, like, you deliberately choosing this, to use it as a vehicle to inspire others to healing, deliverance, freedom, and so on? Like, if you felt like there would be, I hate to use the word backlash or whatever, I guess it can be scary being vulnerable, is what I'm saying. So what prompted you to push forward?
It can be scary being vulnerable, but do I want to please God, or do I want to please people? Because people will never be satisfied with you, no matter what you do. I chose this vehicle because I know that God has spared my life on several occasions for this purpose, and I had the desire to want to reach people. Podcasts can be heard while driving in the car, exercising, cleaning, whatever you're doing. And it's easy for people to access. And the enemy wants people to believe their struggles are isolated to them. And I know this because that was my experience. I thought I was the only one going through something. And so I cannot say I love my sisters and brothers and know they're suffering and do nothing to help. I can't, like you just used the word minister, I can't sit there and see somebody going through and they're in a bad relationship or something, or they've lost their mother, and I don't take the opportunity to minister to them. how can I say that I love them with the love of Christ?
That is a hard question for anyone to ask themselves. And it takes a lot of humility and maturity and courage to answer the question honestly, like once faced with that question. So, okay, so part of your bio consists of the following. It was time for her to share her truths about her struggling marriage, challenges with faith, battles with depression and suicide attempts, and trusting the process of grief. That is a lot. So can we take them one subject at a time? I'm sure there are countless others who are currently in situations that are similar to yours and would like for us to pick it apart a little bit, as much as we can in the time frame allotted. So,
Right.
Struggling marriage. Now, I'm going to be transparent enough to say that my marriage is struggling. And I say that because, man, marriage is not easy, y'all. I don't know and I'm not trying to discourage anyone out there who has hopes and desires to get married. Do you? But let me get you some counseling, some premarital counseling, get you some people that's been in the game 20, 30, 40, 50 years who can
Amen.
guide you and speak some godly wisdom to you. Get you some help. And don't wait until stuff goes bad to get into therapy, man. I think that every married couple, every human should be in some form of therapy. And if you think that you don't need therapy, then you the reason. It's your fault. I'm sorry. But so me and my husband, we're both believers. And it's hard. You hear what I'm saying? So it makes me think, like, when people aren't believers, like, what is their source? Where does it come from? Like, how do they do it? Because, like I said,
alcohol, I don't know.
Listen, you right. Something, we self-medicated some kind of way. Because, like I said, me and my husband, we're believers, and it's hard. So, what was your experience?
Well, I was married for 10 years, and unfortunately it ended in divorce, but I did learn a life experience from being married.
Mm-hmm.
Most importantly, marriage is a ministry.
Yeah.
And you have to be two whole people, not broken people. You can't like bring 20% of yourself and he brings 70% of himself and expect it to work. You got to work out your issues. And like you mentioned, counseling is absolutely necessary. Mm-hmm. We were going to do premarital counseling, and then he said no. Then I said no. And then we just went ahead and ran to the courthouse and got married because I didn't want us to have counseling because I knew we had issues. Oh. And see, a lot of people think if we live together, oh, well, we might as well get married. It's not the same.
Lies. Oh, Lord.
But three things that I've learned.
Okay. Let me get my notes. Hold on. One. Mm-hmm.
God ordained marriage, but not all marriages. God didn't put all these people together.
Right.
Sometimes we walk into relationships and then expect God to fix it. I was living in sin, shacking. And so I got married thinking, okay, God will make this relationship better once we get married. God is not in the business of fixing our messes that we do out of disobedience. Like, that's not his job. 2, only God can change people. Broken people can't fix another broken person. A lot of times we get with people and be like, oh, a guy will get with a girl, I'm going to love her like nobody ain't never loved her before. Oh, she's broken, I'm going to help heal her. No, she needs therapy. She needs to handle her issues before she becomes one with him.
Yeah.
And you just, when you reject yourself, when you don't love yourself, when you don't know who you are, marriage is not the place for you just yet.
I need you to say that again for the people in the back. Say it one more time.
If you don't know who you are,
you don't know. Oh, Lord.
If you don't love yourself, you can't love nobody else.
Man, listen.
Marriage is not for you.
It's not for you, man. Somebody pass the offering plate, please. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Miss F. Pastor
And
Ellen.
the last thing is communication. You have to be absolutely honest with your feelings. You can't be married and have a thin skin. I think we would do better in marriages if we could be honest with each other and without the other person getting so offended. But from my experiences, spouses cheat because they go and have conversations with the opposite sex saying, well, what do you think about this? You know, when she did this. And that's how they get caught up emotionally. They don't have to start with the physical. They got somebody listening to them about a subject that they think or a conversation they're having that they feel like their spouse won't have with them.
Honest with your feelings. Listen. I was about to go into my therapy session. I'm not going to do it. Focus, Andrea, focus. But no, I hope y'all taking notes. I was taking notes for real. She said, number 1, God ordained marriage, but not all marriages. Number 2, only God can change people. And number 3, communication. You got to be honest with your feelings. Can't have thin skin in the marriage because it's just not going to work. It won't work. So this is what you learned in your 10-year union. Now, last week I had a lady on and she was telling us about her journey and how she went from, married to divorce and now after. And we both came up with a conclusion like, I myself, I'm feeling differently about divorce, and I'm not advocating for divorce. I need y'all to hear my heart. And I'll say the same thing I said. Yeah, I'll say the same thing I said last week. Like, I don't believe that it's God's will for some of these marriages to continue. Like, if your husband is beating you for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that's not God's plan for you. And I feel comfortable saying that. So she was married for a very long time. I want to say coming up on 20 years. I'm not sure. Mama Kathy, don't be mad at me. I'm sorry. I know it was a very long time. And she said she didn't see her marriage as a failure because she learned. And I felt that in my shondo. I was like, yes, ma'am. Because how can it be a failure? I mean, if you literally learn some hard... Yes. And them nuggets that you just dropped, ma'am, that sound like some stuff that you went through that you was forged in the fire. And now that it's yours, can't nobody take it from you.
Absolutely not.
Okay. So, the next one on the list in your bio was your challenges with faith. I believe this is yet another area where many struggle. However, something, maybe pride or fear of judgment from peers or church community, it prevents people from being transparent enough to admit it. And subsequently, this prevents them from getting the help that is often desperately needed. So what was your experience as? Was it the marriage, the trouble in marriage? What was that thing that caused your, faith in your challenges with faith?
Well, my challenge with faith started early on because my belief in Christ started when I was about 10 years old. And I was having trouble at home. So being a babe in Christ, I just figured, I believe in Christ and he's going to fix all these problems for me immediately. I didn't really understand, as the scripture says, faith is the substance of things hoped for. I didn't really understand that you had to be patient and pray to God, and if it's in his will to change things, that he will. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was a struggle being a child during those days, because if you always believe that Christianity is going to be good, that Jesus is going to bless you every time you ask, you're going to be disappointed, heartbroken, and confused. And most definitely I was. There was even a point in my life that I thought God hated me. But I think the struggle with faith is that, one, people believe that Christianity is just going to be easy. Salvation is going to seal the deal, and you're just going to have this wonderful, great life. And then one of my, I guess to say, pet peeves from my years of being in the church is the lack of people in the body that are completely vulnerable and willing to say that I've been there.
Man.
And I feel like if more people were completely honest, that would help some people in their faith.
Yes,
but people get saved, they get sanctified, they forget they ever had a past, and then instead of extending an olive branch to help someone that is trying to follow Christ, they just kind of look over them or look down on them or remain silent, and that's how people fall to the wayside, because there's nobody really there mentoring them or helping them along the way.
It is the absolute worst. And what you're saying is 100% true. Like, and when you said that earlier about, like, when you decided to do your podcast, you was worried about people would say, I felt that, because I was like, it's not going to look like what some people want it to look like. Like, and no offense, I love my church and I love, all my people and everybody. But I feel like maybe some of them expected it to be more, I hate to use the word, but can I say churchy? And the reason I hate to, like, I'm not trying to paint a picture, but I'm just trying to say, I don't want to be put in that box, because I have a little ratchet in me, and everybody doesn't do the same thing. Like, you have to, like, if you want to be effective in ministry, you have to be able to meet people where they are. So if you is in somewhere, let's say like at a wedding or whatever, and you hear those words, cash money taking over for the 992, and you want to get up a little, shake a little something. Some people might look at you differently because you in the church. And if I have, God forbid, you got a title, minister or pastor, like, you can't be dancing. But what I'm saying, like, why come I can't? So you got to be able to meet people where they are. And if you have this holier than thou attitude, you're going to miss out on some of the greatest opportunities to connect with some of the most beautiful souls. And then, like you said, you'll be instrumental, unfortunately, in causing those people to fall to the wayside, because they think that they have to be so perfect, when the fact of the matter is that we are all flawed.
Right. We are all flawed. I don't care how many Sundays you spend in church. I don't care how much you put in the offering plate. I don't care how many times you spoke in tongues. We are all flawed.
We all flawed. And I'm still going to get up and dance every time I hear Juvie come on. I don't care what nobody say. I could be 50 years old. I'm here. That's all. Do. Like, hey. Okay, stop. Focus, Andrea. Okay. So, one of the next ones on your list was battles with depression and suicide attempts. Now, I can't help but notice that you use the word attempts as in plural, as in there were more than one occasion where you actually attempted suicide. So I have like this onslaught of questions, and you can take them, and digest them. So I'm like, what brought you to this place? What brought you out of it? Like, how did you actively refrain from returning to such depths? Like, you're a believer. You said that you've been in Christ since 10, and I'm fully convinced that you're saved. However, what do you have to say to those who don't believe and are dealing with depression and suicide? Like, there are two sides to this thing.
Well, I've never been an unbeliever, so my advice for them that don't believe is always the therapy. But I'm going to talk about, I'll mention two of the occurrences that happened and how I got to that place. During my teenage years, junior high, I was very awkward. I was like a nerd. I didn't do the latest trends. I didn't really care about the latest trends. And my mom didn't teach me to do my hair and makeup, so I did it the best I could, which it was awful. And sometimes she'd pay to get my hair done, but because, like, I didn't have confidence, I thought I was ugly. If somebody told me my hair was ugly, I would just go home and take it down. But we used to say when I was kids, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. That's a lie.
Right.
Because words would tear me up. One of the things that I would do when I was a teenager, and I tried it multiple times, but I didn't succeed. I would sit in my bedroom closet and I would take a bandana and tie it tightly around my neck until my lips turned blue. And I got so dizzy to the point I was about almost passed out. But going to the church, and when I mentioned attending church, I was going to church by myself. It wasn't my parents taking me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. There was no family attending church with me. So I knew about heaven and hell. And I kind of felt like I was already living in hell. So I would be like, I don't want to end up in an eternity in hell. And that would stop me. And I thank God for watching over me, because so many people think that it was about attention, and didn't understand that I was really hurting.
Right.
And then as an adult, before me and my former husband got married, it was during the Christmas holidays, and he had left once again. Our relationship was a merry-go-round. And so I sent a group text to his family that I was going to end my life. I had Clorox and ammonia, which, just cleaning with the combination is toxic, and I was going to drink them both. And I managed to drink the Clorox, and my father came knocking on the door, but it was really my mom that I wanted there. And so I climbed out the window, and I fled on foot that night. People don't understand just how real depression is. And sometimes they think people are just having a pity moment and they'll just get over it, and that their feelings aren't valid when they really are. I plead with people that are listening, if you know anybody in that situation, take them seriously. But ultimately what brought me out was acknowledging that something was broken within me. And that was in 2016 when I realized something is really broken within me. And I went against what our culture believes about going to therapy.
Girl, why? Why are we like
No.
this?
I went to therapy.
Yes.
They say folks don't go to therapy. I went to therapy.
I know that's right. We don't, though. It vexes me. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
And therapy helped me tear up that old cracked foundation and learn more about myself and why I hurt so much, and why I wanted so badly for other people to tell me that they needed me to live, that they wanted me to fight to live. I had to learn to love me and fight for my very own life. Because when you live for somebody else and then that person disappoints you, as people will do, then you're right back where you started or worse.
Wow. So you said...
It took me a process. It took me 30-something years to really get to a point where I love myself, and every morning I look in the mirror and I smile at me, and I'm happy to see me, and I'm happy to see the light in me.
I love that. Yes, look in the mirror, boo. Smile. I'm living my best. Let me stop. So, 2016, though, that's like recent. So,
right.
In the past few years is when you were able to, work through things enough to be like, okay, this is who I am and I'm loving me.
Well, see, my husband left in 2016, and that was the final straw.
Okay.
We separated in 2016, and I told God, this is the final straw. I have got to quit, get this toxic cycle out of my life. I'm not going backwards. And I went through a lot of things financially because I had never lived on my own as an adult. And it was hard emotionally because of stuff. Well, we were separated for 2 years before we actually divorced. And the beginning of 2017, God sent an angel in my therapist.
Yeah.
And January 2017, I started counseling, and that is, how I got to know myself and build myself up emotionally, and learn that just how broken I was, that I wasn't. If I'd have known what I knew about me, I never would have gotten married, because we did so much damage to each other. I did so much damage to him because I was so jacked up.
I love that you're healed enough to say that, though, to honestly be like, okay, this was my part that I played in the demise of my marriage.
Right.
Because we all play a part, and if you say you don't, you're lying, and you need to get some therapy.
we love to bash the man, but no,
right.
I can't do that.
Right.
I can't do that.
Oh my gosh, I was just praying recently because I just feel like, man, marriages are under attack. Like there's an onslaught against marriages. I have so many friends and associates that I know that are going through. And here I am telling my business again, y'all. But I was like, well, Lord, why am I keep coming across these people that's going through the same? My marriage, it need help too. But I was praying because I was like, I need to be able to look at people through the eyes of compassion. Like, I need to be able to look at the husband and wife. Like, okay, the wife has told me this is what happened with the husband, so now I'm automatically mad at the husband. And he was like, nah, that's not how it goes. Like, it's 2 or 3 stories
Right.
to each and every side. So we have to be able to look at both sides being, responsible for the current state of things in any marriage. So I just thought that was not coincidental that you said that, but yes. So there was another one, and I think not to categorize these in any level of importance, but this one is pretty major. Trusting the process of grief. Most people don't see grief as a process. We want that microwave experience. As Americans, we want it now. Now,
Right.
America. So they want it to be quick and done. But that's just not, it doesn't work that way. There was one episode in particular, you guys. Okay. The absence of her. I'm going to let y'all know where to find her in just a little bit. But there was this one episode in particular. It was called Holiday Hurt. I went back and I listened it, and I loved it. Like, you put into words what I believe countless people experience on different holidays. Like, different holidays mean different things to different people, and they trigger so much. So, I'd like for you to touch on your process. Like, what did you learn about actually grief being a process? And then how did you get to the point where you're okay with, like, trusting that process?
Well, you're absolutely right that we live during a time when we want to be instantly gratified. So when it comes to telling a person to be patient or trust the process, of course, that's the last thing somebody wants to hear.
Mm-hmm.
I shared in Holiday Hurt about my visit to the neurologist and how I was absolutely sure something had to be medically wrong because of the forgetfulness and exhaustion I was experiencing. And it was denial. And what I love about God, because you just mentioned this about Him putting people in your path that have gone through the exact same experiences. He sent 2 people in my path, one at work and one right there in the office when I was getting the EEG done. So that I didn't feel ashamed or crazy in my head, where He's saying, you got to let your brain rest. You got to allow yourself to process this grief, because it's going to break your body down if you don't.
Oh.
Death can be very traumatic. But I did not feel like I was sad because I wasn't crying every day.
Mm-hmm.
But also I wasn't allowing myself to feel the loss of my mother. And here's the thing. If we have a car accident, there's trauma to the body.
Right.
So even if we ain't got a broken bone or a scar, we still got to go get checked out by a doctor.
Mm.
So why don't we do that for our mental health when it's trauma?
Listen, please, a round of applause. Like, y'all, goodness, please. I'm sorry, carry on.
So my process, it consists of prayer, consistent therapy sessions, and I've reached a point in my grief that if I feel sad and miss her, and that is just recently, I cry. Like, I had somebody kill my dog, stole my wallet cry a couple months ago for Mother's Day. And then I got up. I don't allow myself to remain in bed because, that's when depression hit me. You sit around, flunking around, eating up stuff, whatever. I did a little exercise. I watch something funny, or I'll visit a friend, and have a good support system.
Yeah.
Have friends so good that you can tell them, hey, today not a good day. Or tomorrow is the anniversary of her death, so that they'll text you and say, hey, friend, how you doing? You want to go hang out or whatever? You got to be honest about your feelings. And don't be all offended if somebody don't remember the anniversary of so-and-so's death, Because everybody has things going on, but that's just part of my process, being honest about my feelings, because I wasn't always honest about my feelings. Allowing myself to cry, because if you hold that stuff in, it'll break you down. If you try to rush it too much, it'll overwhelm you. Mm-hmm. And so you gotta take the baby steps with it. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't let anybody tell you, oh, you still grieve with that person 2 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you don't have to mourn them forever and be around, oh, I can't live without them. Because sometimes I think we do that because it makes us feel like it's not okay. If we love them, it's not okay for us to let them go. And it's okay. It's okay.
It's okay. It is. Wow.
But yeah, that's just, I take it one step at a time. And I try not to overwhelm myself. It's been 2 years, and I've just started going through her belongings. But you have to have a good support system. Therapy, prayer, some activities.
Friends.
You gotta be a well-rounded person to get through grief.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for being so transparent. I know it's still a process, and I know it's something that, you continue to work through. So, I just know that this is helping somebody. Like, shoot, you already helped me. So, if ain't nobody else, thank you, Lord. Now, I feel like, now I could be wrong. And if I am, then you can tell me. But I feel like you should have a book somewhere. Like, you laughing. I'm serious. Have you, okay, so the more and more that these people will continue to cross your path, the more that God will put you in places where you will have a platform so that way you can reach mass amounts of people. You're going to have people asking you, well, what about this? Like, I was asking, well, how did you do this? How did you do this? You're going to get tired of people asking you, well, how did you do this? And can you give me any resources to tell me how? You are the resource, ma'am. So if you never thought about putting pen to paper, then maybe now would be a good time for you to start.
Well, I will say writing is one of my favorite things.
Okay.
As far as the upcoming projects that I'm working on, right now, I'll use the phrase "real G's move in silence." But
There you go. Come on, Lil Wayne. See, that's what I'm talking about.
but know this: any idea, creation, work that God has laid in my spirit, I plan to follow through with. So there will be more of Everett Maxine. Podcasting was just the beginning.
Okay.
I do have some upcoming episodes on podcasts.
That's what, yeah.
Gonna
What's
be
up
talking
and coming?
about your gifts.
Oh, like
regards
spiritual
to
gifts?
Yeah, your gifts. And the things God is trying to show us in this season with all this corona and all these different things going on. And then I'll be digging back into relationships, and one of my favorite titles is I'm in Lust.
Man, keep it 100, would you please? I'm sorry. It's not funny, but I want to laugh because I understand. Look, I got a past, and that's why I'm like really wary about people putting me in boxes. I don't want to let y'all down. But if y'all knew some of the stuff, like, listen, you might look at me differently.
The thing about it is, you're not the one in the box. They are. You're free. You're
yes,
free
ma'am,
to
I'm
be
free.
You're free to be you.
And don't mind telling you either. So listen. So wait, spiritual gifts. What God is showing us in this season, and then you said I am in lust. These are all the names of the podcasts that are coming up for, or the episode names for the absence of her that are coming up.
Well, they're subject areas.
Okay.
The last one, I'm in lust, is an actual title.
Listen. I don't know about y'all, but I'm going to be tuning in because there's a couple of things, especially that when I am enlisting, I think there might be some things I will be able to identify with. You mind y'all business and judge your mama. Anyway, so last but not least, I would like to give you the opportunity to shamelessly plug yourself. Where can people find you? Drop your social media tags, your websites, all that good stuff. Wherever you would like people to find and or contact you, here is your chance.
I'm on Instagram. You can follow me at I am Everett Maxine. Everett is spelled EVERRET, Maxine. My Twitter is at Everett Maxine. My YouTube is Everett Maxine. My Facebook page is Everett Maxine. I have a hashtag, I am Everett Maxine. And then there's my email, birth2bless2019@gmail.com.
Birth to Bless, come on. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Birth to Bless, BIRTHED Bless, T019 @gmail.com.
Yes, I hope all y'all got all that. And if not, you can catch it on the replay. I'll have it posted later this evening. So, Everett Maxine of The Absence of Her. Find her. Find the podcast. Like I said earlier, she's on Apple, she's on Audrey, she's on Spotify, she's on iHeartRadio, Castbox, Deezer, Pandora. Find her. Listen, I'm not going to give nobody no props over nothing that I wouldn't listen to myself. I need y'all to know that, because I know that y'all trust me when I'm talking, or else you wouldn't be listening. So find Miss Everett Maxine on The Absence of Her and give her a good listen. Everett, thank you so much for, first of all, you way in Texas. You know what I'm saying? We up here near the Chi. You way in Texas, and you taking your morning out to spend it here with We Are Not So Different. So thank you very much for coming. And then most of all, thank you for your transparency and your vulnerability. And thank you for choosing to use what the enemy meant to tear you down to build someone else up. You're a blessing to many.
Thank you.
All right. Well, guys, until next week, I want y'all to stay cool, because it is hot as you know what out there. So get you somewhere, lay in somebody's pool, or suck up somebody's AC. And we'll try it again next week. We are not so different.
Hey y'all, I'm back. I hope you enjoyed that rather lengthy interview, but it had so much great information. It even motivated me to get back to some of those projects I mentioned about, even some of those podcast episodes that I mentioned, because actually I never got to covering spiritual gifts. I hope that conversation blessed you, because every time I listen to it, it motivates me, it inspires me, and it lets me know that you are listening. This is Everett Maxine. Please like, share, and tell somebody about The Absence of Her. Stay blessed.